What do engineers think of non-technical people
That's
that
a good
work
question.
at the company?
I want to hear this. Do y'all be talking mess about me?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Care to Elaborate podcast with Taylor and Travarus. Today, we have an exciting episode for you. We're going to be talking about something that Taylor and I cannot directly identify with because we are non-technical folks who work in the technical industry. But today, we have somebody who is an expert in technical skills in transition. So, before we get to our guest, I want to ask Taylor, how are you?
You know, I've had better days. I ain't gonna lie. But y'all know, I feel like every other episode I have new hair, and it's a new hair episode, so that makes it better for me. But yeah, the people are irritating me. But that's a whole nother
People are
story.
peopling.
The people are peopling, and they need to people away from me. But that's a whole nother story for later. So my hair is making my 5 out of 10 day a 7 out of 10 day.
Oh, I mean, that's a good upgrade. That's
Yeah,
worthy. That's
a little
official.
hair and a little makeup can go a long way. When you look better, you feel better. You feel me?
Absolutely.
All right.
Without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Max Myers, to the podcast. Max, we're so happy to have you and ready to share some information about your expertise and the things that you've contributed to the tech space. But I want to give you the floor to introduce yourself. So go ahead and tell the people about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Max Myers. I work at Microsoft as a software engineer. I started in January 2024. And before that, I graduated from University of Maryland, College Park in May of 2023. I studied computer science there, and I also interned at Microsoft 3 times while I was there as well. And in 2022, I started my own company called LinkedIn or LeftOut LLC to help people break into tech. But that's a little bit about me.
Hold on, that's fire. Let's back up a little bit. I want to talk about LinkedIn or Left Out, but before that, you interned at Microsoft 3 times?
Yep.
How was that possible? How was that? Did you start as a sophomore? Like, talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So it was a mistake, honestly. It should have only been
Okay.
But yeah. So I interned my sophomore year, my junior year, and after my junior year, I got a return offer for full time. But I was thinking about running. I also ran track and field while I was at University of Maryland, and I was going to do a 5th year. But with the state of the economy and stuff, a lot of offers got taken back. And so I changed my offer to an internship offer so I could potentially run track again. But I ended up wanting to actually just start my career, but they weren't able to change my offer back. So I had to go through with that internship even after I graduated and then kind of earn a full-time return offer again after I graduated.
It's like a life hack.
Yeah, pretty much. Low key. Yeah.
That's fire. Okay, wait. So I did not know that part of your story, and that is interesting. And I want to ask, why Microsoft? Like, because to go back to the same company 3 times, why did you stay instead of diversifying your experience?
I feel like it boils down to 2 things. I'll say one thing for sure is definitely the technical interview process. I did not really want to go through that again at that time.
Yeah. That's real. Oh my God, that's so real. That's so real.
But then I would say the second thing would probably be there was a lot to still learn at Microsoft. And I feel like still going back to Microsoft, even after being there twice and then starting full time after my 3rd internship, I still had so much to learn on the team that I was on. So I was still interested in like that specific space that I was working on because I work on the Microsoft Edge team. Yeah.
Okay, so talk a little bit more about that. Like, what were some of the lessons that you learned going from internship to internship that ultimately help you get the full-time role?
To internship. You
Right,
forgot one internship. You forgot one.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, the 3.
Yeah. I would say definitely the scope of work. So like the amount of responsibility that you have as you like progress through your internships, because after my 1st and 2nd internships, like my scope of responsibility continually started to increase because I kept coming back to the same team after my 2nd year. So with that scope of responsibility increasing, I feel like I also had to become more accountable with the different projects I was working on because it was really up to me to, get those features in and actually complete the project to get the return offer. So I would say like, yeah, that was probably one of the most difficult parts was the amount of responsibility that I had just from from submitting projects on my own in school and then transitioning to having like large scale projects that you're working on within a corporation. That was one of the challenging parts for sure.
Would you say that the preparation from all three internships allowed the transition to be smoother, or would you say that it was still a learning curve?
There is definitely still a learning curve, but I would say I definitely think I was farther ahead when I started in January of last year than I would have been if I didn't do any of those internships with Microsoft. Specifically, what I work on is pretty, I would say, pretty niche within Microsoft itself. So having that experience being on the team already definitely kind of gave me a head start on anybody that say would have joined the team without having have been an intern before that.
So I think the thing that also is important to talk about is the fact that not only did you do three internships at Microsoft, but you're not keeping that information to yourself. You've decided to start a company called LinkedIn or LeftOut that has helped over 600 people break into tech. Talk to me about number one, why did you start an initiative to help people? Because you could have just been fine on your own. And what is the passion behind it to continue for you to help people to break into this industry?
Okay, yeah. So I definitely think that in terms of why I started LinkedIn or Left Out, the journey of getting to my first internship was so difficult that I kind of felt like it was like almost like a responsibility to almost make more information like publicly available. So
Right.
the first time I went through the application cycle, I applied to over 420 different companies. And
Hold, time out,
That's what I said. Did you see my eyes?
time out,
Lord.
time out, time out, time out. 420, like 420.
420.
Before, I want you to answer the question, but before, how did you track that? Like, how did you organize to deduce it was 420? Like, what type of pivot table Excel sheet were you using in order to like, yeah, 420, that's it?
I literally had a Google Sheet, like a Google Sheet job application tracker. I think my mom had one that she had used before, and then she sent that to me. Told me, "Yo, make sure when you're applying to like these different roles that you're like keeping track of everything." So that's how I started, and then yeah, that like I was literally sitting there every single day during my sophomore year. Me and my friends, at the end of every day, we would apply to at least like 5 internships a day, and that was from September until like probably January.
So this brings me to a whole nother question that I want to get back to LinkedIn or left out. But you mentioned something about your mom. You mentioned something about your homeboy. That reminds me of community. You were surrounded by people who were successful or were trying to be successful. Can you talk a little bit about either what your parents do or how they prepared you, and also the community you've built with people who are also trying to do what you do?
Yeah. So my parents are definitely a huge factor and probably like the largest factor in my success today. My mom works in tech and she works within customer success specifically. She's like a customer success executive. But my father, he worked at the Department of Education, and he wrote grants for a lot of the programs that are, instituted in high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools around the entire country. So I've always had like a big focus on education when I was growing up, and that definitely sowed the seeds for what I'm doing right now. And then additionally, I think community is literally everything.
Yep.
If I didn't have some of my friends that I was working with, like in that example, like, applying for internships every single day, even after we've already sat there and done our homework all day, went to class, all of that stuff, and then went to go practice, technical interview skills and stuff like that, I definitely wouldn't be as far as I am today without having like that almost accountability system with my friend group.
So y'all hear that? Iron sharpens iron. So be
Facts.
careful who y'all hanging around. And I think that's a big thing, especially as people are, in high school, going into college, is figuring out who are your people and making sure that you stick with people who are, equally yoked with you. Because I think people often get so off track, and it's easy to get off track when you're hanging around people that are just not aligned to your mission and
Facts.
what you need to do.
Exactly.
So shout out to
Yep.
you. Yeah, honestly, all of Max's friends are like very well rounded. It's actually quite odd.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Nah,
actually
I'm gonna tell you. I
interesting.
don't know your friends, but I can tell you that my friends are similar, and we've been friends for about 20 years. And the reason that I moved back to New Jersey, where I'm from after being in California for so long, is to continue to build around them. They're all married. They all have kids. So when I was taking that journey, I wanted to come back to be around my boys. So I would say that the community space allows you to feel like you're not the only person, which is always weird when you're like the only successful person. Um, but it's not as rare as you may think. There's a few other folks out there who are also trying to, build community and keep it together.
Yeah, definitely.
Shout out to the community. Wait, but let's go back to your question, Travarus. But first, tell people what LinkedIn or LeftOut is.
Let's start
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
So, LinkedIn or LeftOut. Me and my co-founder, at the time, it was me and my roommate. We started it in 2022 in June. It seemed like pretty much every day we would spend time helping different students that were younger than us, like different people that like looked up to us within our community, helping them with either their resumes, reviewing their resumes, helping them select their courses for computer science, showing them different internship opportunities that we didn't know existed when we were their age, et cetera. And so one day, like my co-founder Herdine, he he's very technically skilled, and he works on like a lot of side projects and has a lot of different startup ideas. And so one day I was like, we could literally make something out of this right here. Like we have something that's working, and we already have results with the students that we're working with. So I feel like if we went all into this, we would be able to make a noticeable difference within our community, and then also be able to build something like large scale if we focused on this. And from that day, that's when we started working on LinkedIn or LeftOut. And we primarily work with students right now through services such as resume reviews, mock interviews, and then like LinkedIn profile reviews. But we're also working on creating a platform where students can build their technical interview skills as well.
Need to get on that platform and learn some.
Learn what? What? Talk to us about what you're going to learn.
AI
about
taking over the world. I need to know how to
Okay.
at least basic code in case the robot try to come after me. Maybe
I was going to say, you definitely LinkedIn and not LeftOut. You're in.
I am LinkedIn, but I got to get to the technical part of the,
I get it.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Well,
I understand.
Yes. Okay. So Max, thank you for that. So I love how you were able to see that there was a gap within your community and fill it in. And you said you've helped over 600 students, which that's a lot of students. That's a lot of people. So when you have been helping all of these students, what are some of the common mistakes that you see when these students are like preparing for the technical interview? Because I mean, I feel like 600 people, that's a good pool for you to figure out like what's working and what's not.
Yeah, I would say definitely it's mindset for sure, but also, I think the mindset is what starts all of it. So when you're preparing for a technical interview, I feel like a lot of students are already like very jaded about the entire experience and already have like, preconceived notions of I'm going to fail anyways, or like different things like that you have to kind of work through and unpack. And so what that can kind of snowball into from what I've seen so far is they'll almost kind of not prepare because they don't think that they're going to be successful anyways. So
like a self-sabotage.
Exactly. A lot of students, so many students self-sabotage in a way where, let's say they apply for 100 different roles and they get 5 interviews. A lot of students are so surprised that they got 5 interviews that they never even started practicing for interviews. And that's really a process that's going to take like 3 months for you to learn from like
3 months?
Yeah. It's going to take you 3 months to be able to really pass a technical interview. I would say 90% of the time.
I ain't gonna lie, we just be showing up.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
Well,
how long you prepared, Taylor, for an interview?
Maybe a day or two.
Talk about it. You showing up,
notes down.
I mean, to be a high achiever, there's certain baseline things that you have to do. I'm not talking about researching the company. I'm talking about how often do you rehearse and study the content that you're going to talk about in your interview.
I have done that. For like maybe not for no 3 months, but
no.
But I would also say the skills that you use, like when you're studying for those 3 months, are the skills you're going to be using on the job as well. So it's kind of like
they are or aren't.
They are.
Okay. Which I guess makes it a little bit more applicable. Yeah. So, like meanwhile, on the non-tech side, none of the stuff that they ask us will really be used. Like it's more behavioral. Like like we're not doing this. Like that's not
What
gonna
they
be a
might ask you
scenario.
about, like, if you was in this situation, what would you do? And you could be in that but to
I'll
your
give you an
point,
example.
it ain't the same.
I'll give you an example. So on the non-tech side, especially when you're going for a high level individual contributor or a middle manager, they actually do case studies. A lot of case studies, right? To me, it feels like free labor because they're asking me to do something that, that just so y'all can get y'all joint off. But it requires a lot of brain power and preparation for you to build that case study, and you don't even know if you're gonna get the job or not.
Exactly.
And oftentimes, the case study is a very specific issue that the company is facing that if you get here, you might not even have to solve for it. So that's what I mean. You put all this brain power in, whereas on your side, it's a skill. Whereas you're going to be tested on this skill, and you'll be using this specific skill when you get here. So I like the fact that at least the 3 months yield the fact that you'll be using this thing
Yeah.
versus let's do this case study.
That's valid. That's
Yeah.
valid.
And it just feels like you're doing that free work. Yeah.
It does. It does.
Okay, so
Shout
talk
out.
about this 3-month period that students are going through in order to prepare. What is going on for 3 months? Like I know, I've heard of leak code. Still don't. I know what it is.
Yeah.
Travarus, he gonna hip you on it. He gonna hip you on it. I've done a little bit of research.
Put me on.
I know a little some.
Sure. Yeah.
But tell us, what does this 3 months entail?
Yeah. So the 3 months, also this assumes that you've taken like the first like 1 or 2 computer science courses that teach you data structures and algorithms. But after learning that foundational stuff, what you really need to do is just practice as many questions as possible on LeetCode. And so LeetCode is just a repository of like all of the frequently asked technical interview questions, split up by all the different programming languages. There's around like 4,000 questions on there. But the main thing with LeetCode is a lot of people will have this argument where they'll say like it's not useful on the job and stuff like that. And I don't think that LeetCode itself, like the different questions that are on there, are like questions they're definitely not questions you would have at work or anything like that. But it's more so like the problem solving skill that you're building when you're doing LeetCode is what you use when you're programming on the job. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like within software engineering. And so during this 3-month period, they have a lot of different types of problem lists that you can focus on that'll let you understand like the different categories. So like they have a list called the blind 75, for example, which splits 75 questions that are the most frequently asked 75 interview questions into 8 different like distinct categories. So you can study them by their different like categories and then like kind of move in a more uniform way instead of just doing like, random questions from a bucket of 4,000 questions. But
That makes sense. You know what this reminds me of in terms of some of the stuff is applicable on LeetCode, but more or less it's to prepare your train of thought. If anybody has studied to become a lawyer, you have to take the LSAT before you can apply to law school. The LSAT is full of logic. Logic questions are probably some of the hardest questions you'll ever be asked. And they ask simple questions, but like in logic, conventional wisdom is not like 1 + 1 does not equal 2 in logic.
Yeah.
It's this really strange thing. You as a lawyer, you won't be using that specifically, but it helps you to understand how to think like a lawyer.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think that's that's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
So it also feels like LeetCode is something. It's a really great resource, but it shouldn't be taken as like the sole resource.
Exactly. Definitely
Got
not.
it.
Yeah. There's like 3 main things you want to focus on when you're preparing. And that's really your resume to get you in the door. And then you also have your fundamental skills in data structures and algorithms, which you can then use LeetCode to like practice further upon, but you cannot skip like the foundational stuff. Because if you skip the foundational stuff, you're not going to be able to solve any questions, even questions they have like easy, medium, and hard questions ranked on LeetCode. You won't be able to do any of them if you skip that foundational stuff. And then lastly, you have the actual skill of interviewing yourself and conveying your thought process clearly and articulating yourself. But those are the 3 like main things that we work on at LinkedIn or LeftOut. And then just the main things we work on in general whenever I'm applying to a job or like something along those lines. Yeah.
it's really interesting because I'm big on analogies. You'll find that out later. But it feels like you're a player coach, right?
Yeah.
You're still on the court putting up numbers in terms of your own career, but you're also helping in the off season to help other folks to be on your level. Like a Chris Paul is playing in the NBA, but he has a camp for Chris Paul's camp. Don't make that face, Taylor. It's
I'm
old.
just
I
thinking about
know.
people
I know.
who I know who Chris Paul is, but look,
Okay.
not everybody
But
know
I
who Chris
say
Paul is.
I only say Chris Paul because he has a really famous camp. There are a lot of NBA players that are
Wasn't
in
he
the
on
NBA now.
Nickelodeon? Didn't he do the?
Probably,
He was.
Yeah.
probably,
Okay.
probably.
Anyway,
But you're a player coach, right? And with that said, because you're a player coach, because you're active, you're still on the court theoretically. How active are you with helping people to overcome the coding challenges? Have they evolved since you took yours? How do you stay current with trying to help the next generation of engineers to crack that code? No pun intended.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways. I think like being on the field like that while you're helping people is probably the best, or not even probably. I think is the best way to stay sharp on everything that's going on. So in terms of how I kind of go about that, like working with like my different mentees, for example, like I'll literally sit there and watch them work through the different coding assessments and stuff like that they get.
Yeah, in terms of being a player coach, how do you have to stay current to be able to help the next generation as they transition forward?
Yeah, so definitely things have changed a lot. Interviews have gotten more difficult, just on average for most people. And it seems like a lot of the companies, just with more people being CS majors, computer science majors, and then applying to all of these roles, they're only choosing the people that are literally at the top. Like, even if you pass the technical interview technically, there's a lot of situations in which, and this has happened to me before too, where you don't even get the offer because even though you pass the screening, which is the hardest part, there's still somebody that like performed better than you. So it's literally a competition. So in terms of working through these different coding assessments and stuff like that with the students I work with and staying sharp on all of these things, the way that I go about it is like you kind of always have to be applying. And then always like you got to always stay current on that type of stuff. Like, for example, when I was in college, they didn't have online assessments like they do now, at least the first time around when I was applying for internships, because when I was applying, it was 2020. Yeah, it was 2020 during COVID. So most of the world wasn't ready to, transition from the in-person interview style to the completely online. And so now you see a lot of different things like, a timed coding assessment. And, that goes into a whole bunch of different things like, people
Right.
cheating on coding interviews and stuff like that. So it makes the competition even higher just to get in the door. So yeah, it's definitely a mix of keeping the wheels going by continually applying and then always staying sharp on those skills. Yeah.
so that prompts a question for me because you just talked about how nowadays there are a lot of online technical assessments. Students may be doing all types of stuff in order to pass them. What have you seen with the evolution of AI, considering that it's pretty recent? Like, what type of impact or implications has it had on the technical interviewing process recently?
It has not been good. It's made it a lot worse, to be completely honest. Um, I was literally scrolling on LinkedIn the other day and I saw two. I don't even want to give them I don't want to plug them, but I saw some students that made a software that you can download, and pretty much what it does is it displays like a chat GPT window on your screen while you're in a coding interview. It reads your screen and it tells you it reads your screen. It can hear what the interviewer is saying to you, and then it tells you exactly what to type while you're doing the interview, and it can't be seen by anything that records your screen. So even though they tell you that, you got to share your screen, and they can see where you're looking directly at the screen, and they can't see when you're sharing your screen that you're cheating. So a lot of students have started using AI to do different things like that. And I've seen a lot of students pretty much just use AI as a crutch for, even working through their different courses while they're still in university. So they're not building those foundational skills, and then they're trying to cheat through the technical interview process. And once they get to the actual interview with another human being, anyone can tell when somebody knows what they're talking about versus
Mhm.
whether they're reading a chat GPT response. So
This I have to say this, and this feels like a great part to mention that our podcast is built to talk about the differences between Gen Z and millennials in the workplace. Max, I'm assuming you're a Gen Z, right?
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want to age you, but I think this is your first calculator moment
Now,
where
please.
no, hear me out. Hear me out. There's always a point where you are progressing and you're just living life, and then something comes about to make the person behind you journey easier,
Mhm.
whereas you had to work harder to do that.
yeah,
And then you become a curmudgeon. For instance, people who play basketball in the 90s aren't getting the contracts of the guys in the 2020s, right?
yeah,
You can be bitter or you can acquiesce and figure out how to get your bag along with the other folks. So it's funny that now y'all are having your first moment that AI is making it easier for people under you, and you're just like, hey, bro, we didn't have it like this.
yeah,
We had
Yeah.
to show our work back in the day, and they're like, man, shut up, old head.
yeah.
So
Yeah, literally,
Oh,
they
yeah,
took
it's
me put up
crazy.
on. Yeah,
that's how it go. It happened quick.
Yeah, it did. And I think I don't that makes me a little, I don't want to say concerned, but Max, you can talk about this. It's like, okay, the students are using the AI to get their foot in the door. And I'm assuming after they get their foot in the door, there is like this struggle because now they're still trying to use the AI to code. Like, at what
Right,
point are you
right.
like, are people getting caught doing this? Like, what have you seen be the long-term outcome of students trying to like cheat and get over in these interviews?
I think the main thing is these students are just shooting themselves in the foot, like when they're using AI to do all of the work. Um, the thing with AI is I use AI every day. Like it's a part of like most workflows that I have. It's such a great resource, and it's like if you use it properly, you can learn so much information. Just like yeah, you can learn so much information so much more easily than you would be able to without it. But a lot of the students that I see that use AI, they're cheating their way through class. So they don't ever lay that foundation for computer science. And if you don't lay that foundation, then there's no chance you're going to pass a technical interview. And so how that boils down is a lot of students, like a lot of resumes that I've looked at, for example, like I probably looked at maybe like 50 to 75 resumes in the past 6 months. And it's like, I can immediately tell who used Chat GPT and who didn't. Then even, for example, actually more than that, because we put out a job application for our business and we had like 450-ish applicants. And so looking through all those resumes, I'm like, okay, I know who used Chat GPT and I know who took their time to like, even if they did use Chat GPT, they rewrote it. They tried to structure it in a way that sounds natural, a way that sounds like them. And then additionally, like I've seen students who pretty much prepare for technical interviews by just, regurgitating what Chat GPT says in response to frequently asked interview questions. And I'm like, I know you didn't really come up with that thought yourself. So a lot of times people just like pretty much immediately write themselves out in front of the interviewer or in front of the recruiter or hiring manager who's looking at their resume by over relying on these AI models.
So there is a point where the real work is a separator for who's relying on AI to who's actually doing the work. So there is a point. Now, with that said, because you mentioned that you review these resumes, if you can give 2 tips on how to leverage AI or a chat GPT to accentuate your skill sets or your resume, what are the 2 things that you feel like do this, not that?
Okay, number one, proofread. Like so many people do not proofread. Like that, it's crazy. Proofreading, and then also like so many people do not even read the job description that they're applying to, which is crazy. So
Yeah.
like in terms of tips, what I do, for example, is I ask ChatGPT this job description right here. I'm looking to apply for this. Can you tell me how I can improve my resume and give me suggestions and feedback? But not necessarily can you rewrite my resume immediately, right? And so then or like let's say I wanted to, give some sample bullet points or something. I can at least look at the bullet points and then think about my own experience and then think about how I can, blend my own experience with how ChatGPT is saying that I could improve how I look to the recruiter, hiring manager, or whoever's hiring for that specific role. So I think the main application of ChatGPT or like any AI tool in these types of situations is you can use it to help you understand what to do better, but you shouldn't let it just do the entire process for you because it'll look pretty evident while when you submit your application or you enter the technical interview or whatever the case.
So for you, it's a cherry on top, not the whole cake.
Exactly. Like you have to build those skills yourself, and then
Right.
use AI to take it from like 90% to 100.
I love it.
I see. Okay. So this is interesting because I feel the same. I did not know, number one, that people do not be reading the job description. I'm like, how you applying to a job and you didn't read the
You would be surprised. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's quite
But that goes back to what he said. If they applied to 100 and they got 5, they're like, I got 5? Oh shit, I didn't even read it.
Yep.
That-
That's where it comes from. Yeah.
I mean, okay, that's valid. I mean, I ain't never applied to no job without looking at the description. I need to
You're
make sure.
type A. You dot all your I's and you cross all your T's. We know.
You know what, Travarus? Anyway,
Just saying.
on to our next question of what I'm intrigued to know. So, okay, the students are using AI. Y'all applying to 40, 50, 100, 200, how many ever internships. But can you give us a behind the scenes look at what these FAANG companies, and for those who don't know FAANG, what is it? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. There we go. Okay, yeah, I ate with that. These FAANG level companies are like looking for in a technical candidate, considering that there are so many freaking people applying to these roles at the same time.
Yeah. So I think this is the analogy I always use to explain the interview process where you're actually talking with somebody from like one of these companies. So when you're solving a question, this is what I say. Think about, all right, you got the person who's being interviewed and the interviewer, right? When you're solving a question during an interview, you want to pretty much walk the interviewer through the entire process and have them follow along without being lost, right? So think about that is, let's imagine the interviewer is watching you like let's imagine like you're in a YouTube video and you're explaining how to solve this problem that they gave you. If they understand by the end of the YouTube video how you got from point A to point B, your thought process and the steps you took along the way, then it's almost like, and you have those like, fundamental technical skills, then it's almost certain that you will pass the technical interview in that regard. But where students mess up is when you're interviewing somebody from any of these companies, especially FAANG companies, they're just trying to see if you're somebody that can communicate well, somebody who has strong problem solving skills, and then somebody who fits in like in terms of the cultural and then the technical criteria. That's pretty much it. So being a person that can communicate in a everybody's nervous during an interview, but communicating in a way where you can articulate yourself clearly and bring the interviewer from point A to point B without them getting confused or lost on any of the steps in between is the best way to surefire, like get that offer from whatever company you're looking at, whether it's a FAANG company or any type of tech company. Yeah.
Interesting. And I think so y'all computer science folks, I ain't gonna lie, y'all get a bad rap for being people who cannot communicate.
Exactly.
What?
No, this is a confirmation. Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
yes.
a what question mark. It's a what
No.
exclamation point. All right.
Never in the history of people has anybody said, hey, yo, engineers don't talk to people. And somebody was like, nah, that's a lie.
Exactly.
That's never been said.
They literally
never
don't.
been said.
Yeah.
Y'all don't. Y'all just be typing away. So for everyone listening, they do. They be up there, be
clickety clack,
they be having
clickety
their
clack.
headphones on. Yeah. They don't talk to nobody for the whole 8 hours of the day. Maybe other than in them little stand-up meetings, which and y'all barely be talking there. But anyway, this is out of my wheelhouse, so let me be quiet. But for everyone who is listening, who may be going into a technical interview or who is interested in getting into the more technical side of the tech industry, you have to be well-rounded. It's not just can you code, can you make this thing, can you make this feature? That is all fine and dandy, but a lot of people can do that. And apparently, since people are using AI, Nowadays, it really ain't that hard.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is more so in you being able to communicate why you did such thing, your skill sets, your value. So at the end of the day, even though, tech is becoming more techy, that human centric aspect is still important. So for everyone, y'all can code away, but make sure that you can also converse as well.
Definitely. It's equally as important. Yeah.
Yapping and coding.
Something that folks on the non-tech side that we specialize in is soft skills. And the soft skills are the things that are not, you can't measure, right? So what Taylor is saying is gone are the days where an engineer is going to stand out by just having the technical hard skills. You also have to have the communication because nothing at these offices, especially for a FAANG company or a Fortune 100 company, gets done in a vacuum. You need to collaborate. You need stakeholders. You also need to collaborate when you need help. Communicate when you need help and all those things. But to Taylor's point before, how do you feel about the engineer stigma around loner, not really communicating? It seems like engineers are your own breed and y'all are cool with that, but do you fight against that notion or do you just live in it?
That is such an interesting question, honestly. I would say I definitely think it's 100% true. Engineers definitely, they kind of box themselves in, but I would say just to explain the context, for example, on like an average day of work, you'll probably sit at the computer and code for at least like 7 to 7.5 hours.
Ooh.
And then if you're coding for that long, every single time you change or you switch tasks to doing something that's not coding, you kind of have to spend like double the time getting back into what you were doing because you have to remember so many different things. So then it's like a lot of times people will just, while they're coding during the day or while they're working, they'll just ignore everything. And then it'll just kind of snowball. And then now you get this, like you have this overall stigma in the industry where it's like nobody responds to any messages, nobody communicates, nobody knows how to talk to anybody because even talking to other people is a skill that you have to continue to use. Otherwise, you'll lose it, just like anything else. But I think I think that's a crush that you shouldn't like lean into. I think to be the best engineer, you have to communicate. And for example, even when it comes to different fields that are like, close to engineering, like product management or, data analytics or data science, it's like you have to communicate with all of these people. You have to communicate with stakeholders. And to be the best engineer, you have to have understanding of all of these different fields. And you have to be able to communicate with them in a way that they understand. So if you're, the lonely coder that, sits at his desk all day and doesn't reply to any messages, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, even if you do have stronger technical skills than the people that communicate, because the people that communicate are the ones in the room with the people who are making the decisions. They're making the decisions themselves, and they're making the best decisions because they have the most context in terms of the business that they're working within. But yeah, that's kind of how.
One more question on this, and I'm sorry, Taylor. This made me think about this. What do engineers think of non-technical people
That's a
that
good
work
question.
at the company? What have you heard in terms of the appreciation or lack thereof for people who work at a tech company but don't do technical things?
Yeah, I want to hear this. Do y'all be talking mess about me?
Of course they do.
Oh,
I would say
Us.
for the most part, just like the stigma that was just described, a lot of engineers don't respect people that don't do technical work. However, I think a lot of engineers don't respect people that don't do technical work because they kind of think like whatever they're doing is like the hardest thing that can be worked on, which is it's not. Like it's hard, but there are things that are harder. Just like you're uncomfortable talking to other people for some reason. Like there are people who excel at talking to other people. So like these are all trained skills. And that's kind of how I think. Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. Personally, the way I think about like, other fields is just like you have to understand every role within a business to really get the best results and be the best like individual contributor or even if you're a manager. So one thing I think about when like people make comments, and it's typically like on forums and like, especially people that are younger, just
Blind.
yeah, blind, exactly. Is like you're just like this is ignorance. Like you don't understand the scope of like responsibilities and why different things
or a business.
exactly.
Yeah, in
You
general.
don't understand how business fundamentally works. Because if you did, you would understand that if you're just building something in a silo as an engineer, nobody's gonna want that. Like you don't know like you're just building something that you want. So like that for example, like product management, you can't have a successful tech product without a product manager.
Absolutely can't, because they are the mouthpiece. They get a chance to.
Mhm.
You may have built it, but this product manager understands it. They understand the customer, like, and they can communicate it. And one thing that I think of, then Taylor, you can ask your question is from a non-technical perspective. We look at a lot of technical founders. A lot of technical founders get their companies taken
Yep,
because they don't know how to communicate, or you're thinking in a specific way that is native to you, but not to the customer base that you have built. So oftentimes the founders are taken over by money people or other people who do this other thing, but they become more superior to you in your own company. So
mm-hmm.
Right. Because
engineers,
my whole
look
thing
alive.
is a lot of people think that to work in tech, you have to have like a technical background. And I be telling people all the time that is just not true. You cannot, as you mentioned, have a product without having someone to market it, have someone to sell it, have someone who's doing the accounting in the back end. It makes no sense to be typing away on the computer all day if you don't have the rest of the business set up.
Exactly.
So for all y'all techie folks that think, us non-technical folks just be frolicking around in the office, which I mean, I do frolic from time to time. I will
We'll be
frolic.
frolicking.
I be frolicking because life hard. You gotta frolic a little bit, every day. But we don't just be frolicking. We may be yapping, but it's yapping with substance. So,
Yeah.
we got to break the stigma of the difference between us tech and non-tech folks. We gotta
There's
break
a
that
there's a
bridge.
real art. There's a real art to stakeholder management and stakeholder relationships and
Mm-hmm.
having charisma. And I think that the most effective engineer are the ones who elevate to these C-suite levels, and they have to deal with people, but you can tell that they'll tell you, I didn't start this way. They've taken classes and they've been groomed to be able to speak and command the room. But whereas somebody like Taylor and I, and maybe you Max too, but you put me in a room full of 1,000 people, I'm not, as long as I know what I'm talking about, I'm good. But that might cause a nightmare to somebody else, right? Where it's like, but so I think it's important to understand that a business takes a lot of people to function, and if you are an engineer at a FAANG company or a Fortune 100 company, who reached out to you? Somebody reached out to you that's non-technical, and you got your compensation offer from somebody that's non-technical. Like every aspect of your touch base to even be interested in this company came from somebody who's non-technical. So,
Mm.
you know,
That was a good way of putting it, Travarus. I never really that put the bow on the top for real, for real. Okay, so Max, one thing that I really want to know about, because again, I am non-technical, and I would love to hear your perspective on this. But what is something about being a software engineer that people don't realize until they actually become a software engineer?
I would say two things. So kind of what we were saying before, being the best software engineer means you have to understand the business. You have to understand, like you have to have business acumen to be the best software engineer, in my opinion. You have to understand how to work with all of these different roles like design, product, data, marketing, all of those things. Because when you understand all of those things, you also understand what needs to be built and why and what is acceptable, what isn't. And a lot of problems like over engineering, for example, like spending way too much time building something and like you don't need a rocket to get to the grocery
yeah.
store is the like common.
Oh, I like say it again. Say that again. Talk to him.
I would say, yeah, it's mainly like having that business acumen, like having some context of like business acumen is going to make you the best software engineer, in my opinion. Yeah.
We're coming up to it towards the end of the conversation, and Taylor, let's do this. Let's do some rapid fire questions. How about
Let's get a
I
little. Can
take
we get a buzzer sound? Ding, ding,
you
ding,
know
ding.
right?
Yeah, we gonna
We're
we
going
gonna.
to do a little rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask two questions. The first two, and Taylor's going to wrap up with the last two, and give yourself a cool uh, 30 seconds max to answer these questions. But give you some grace. Give you some grace. So, rapid fire question number one: what's one piece of advice that you heard that you want to give to somebody else?
The learning never stops. That's the biggest thing. the learning never stops. The second you stop learning is the second like your career ends. So the learning never stops. Always focus on learning as much as possible.
Now, this one is going to be big. We'll make sure we're going to clip this one and give this one to you. So you got to make sure you show up with this one. Give me a crash course on LinkedIn or LeftOut in 60 seconds and go.
All right. LinkedIn or LeftOut started in June of 2022. Our mission is to empower job seekers to secure like these top tech roles within these Fortune 500 tech companies, et cetera. Right now, we've worked with over 600 people so far to help them break into different tech roles. And we've successfully gotten people offers at over 50 different companies and then gotten people interviews at over 100 different companies. And the main way that we help students and different people trying to break into tech is through our services, which are resume rewrites, LinkedIn profile reviews, and mock interviews. And then additionally, right now, we're working on a learning platform to help people build their fundamental skills within these these software engineering spaces so that they can break into tech and pass these technical interviews.
I think that was a satisfactory elevator pitch to me. That was fire. That was fire. How you think you did, Taylor?
It ain't down. I mean, I feel like if I was in the elevator and you told me that, I'd be like, dog, let me go sign up so I can, get my resume reviewed. It probably needs.
I might want to invest for a couple dollars to it.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, maybe.
Let me know.
If you're trying to go public, I'll But anyway, when you IPO, call me. So let's go to our final two questions. So what is one tech trend or innovation that you are really, really, really excited about right now? I feel like I know what you're going to say.
AI, for sure. Yeah.
Specifically, what type of AI? What's your go-to AI chatbot?
ChatGPT, for sure.
You might have to cut that. You might get fired.
Copilot, not co-piloting.
He said, "That's going for the
ChatGPT is the best." Yeah, and then also like self-driving cars is cool too. That's a cool application of AI as well. I like both of those areas.
Okay, well, OpenAI, if you hiring, you might want to. He all up on chat.
He did 3 internships. He's ready. He's ready.
He got it. He didn't had all the expertise that y'all need. Y'all better call him. Okay, and lastly, describe your software engineering journey in 3 words.
I would say accountable, challenging, and rewarding. Those are the 3 words I would use to describe it.
That's real humble. That's real humble. If I was the engineer, I would have said something arrogant.
What would you have said, Travarus? I mean, you naturally
can't fuck with me. That's like with me is one word.
I should have said that.
Max, it has been an absolute pleasure. Can you let the people know where to find you on socials and how to get in contact with you if they're interested in LinkedIn or LeftOut?
Yeah, so if you're interested in LinkedIn or LeftOut, you can go to linkedin-or-leftout.com. We have a landing page if you're interested in joining our email list or potentially pursuing any services or anything like that. As far as social media goes, you can also follow us on Instagram and on LinkedIn as well. We have a LinkedIn or LeftOut account. And then as far as my socials, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is MaxOverHeaven. And then my LinkedIn profile is my name, Maxwell Myers.
Well, Max, thank you for joining us today and teaching me some stuff about the technical world because I have never coded anything in my life. I know a little bit about Python. I know the names of the things.
It's a snake, right?
Shut up.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
But thank you for joining us today. And again, y'all hit up Max if you are interested in anything related to the technical industry and getting into tech. He got you.
Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And we'll see you all next time.